Good afternoon, guys. Let's talk about the dysfunctional TRT community on the internet. Whoa. Honestly, it's like a soap opera. People clamoring for recognition, people backstabbing each other to climb above them to earn the title of TRT expert. Honestly, this is what happens when people lose sight of the focus of what is medical therapy. It's a deficiency, and the onus of treatment is replacing the hormone that's deficient. Now, it shouldn't be rocket science. I'm going to use rocket science a few times, I think. It should really be as simple as that. So what's up for interpretation? Well, normal. Normal is up for interpretation because there are a few hypotheses, but there are facts here. Testosterone levels are dropping. Now that's seen as justification for supraphysiological levels, because ergo back in the 1800s they must have had testosterones of 75. Let's have a look back at the pictures of people in the 1800s. Well, no, paintings, obviously, because there weren't cameras. But pictures of men in the 1900s. Did they look like they were big, buff and beautiful? No, but they had massively high testosterones because testosterone levels are dropping. So obviously testosterone levels back in the early 1900s must have been huge. So they must have been all muscular and macho and manly. No. Have a look. Have a look at old footage, old pictures, old film. The average man was in no way, shape, size or form anything similar to the man of today, even with our low testosterones. Is that because of nutrition? Is that because of healthy lifestyles, no stress, good sleep? No, all of these things are so erratic in our modern society. Can we put our more muscular physiques down to simply gear, training methods? Some of us who do have good nutrition. So yeah, there's a kind of like a false justification and assumption that obviously testosterone levels have continued to decline. Ergo, another favourite of some people. Ergo, they must have been massive back in the day. So no, it doesn't. The evidence doesn't actually support that, does it? Whilst there are some papers suggesting obviously testosterone levels were higher, they haven't sort of progressively lowered to the fact that, you know, as I said, back in olden days, they were massively high because these guys weren't huge. You know, the Greek statues were symbols. They weren't actually reflective of the actual size of a typical Greek person. Do a bit of history, do a bit of reading, you might understand. Gladiators in all of these films that we watch nowadays, all of the gladiators in the films now are roided up. Come on, their incredibly muscular physiques are not natural. They do not reflect the modern gladiator, the old gladiator of the day. I mean, come on, get a grip. So yeah, we have that justification of levels were super high back in the day, so we need to be super high now. But why don't we need to be super high? So if we follow that ideology, if levels needed need to be high, why would there be negative physiological results from having super high levels? So why would your HDL go down? Why would your LDL go up? Why would your hematocrit go high? Why would your blood pressure rise? Why would your mental health suffer? It doesn't make sense, does it? So your testosterone dose should be titrated according to the physiological levels of testosterone, estrogen, DHT. Now, if those levels are having a negative impact on other physiological parameters, they are super physiological. Get it? Do you get it? I hope you get it. You should get it. It's not that complicated. It's not rocket science. So yeah, you know, you've got people wanting to make a name for themselves and come up with bold, brash statements. Never have an AI. Always have an AI. Half and half AIs. These guys that make these closed statements don't understand basic physiology. And when you talk in absolutes, you make a fool of yourself if you're a scientist. So you should never really make closed statements. So these guys are jumping on bandwagons, not really understanding basics and not really understanding how the human body works and the fluidity and the fact that when you make these statements, God, you're just morons. So we should always be acting in the best interest of the patient. So when we think about what's the latest thing, there shouldn't really be a latest thing. There should be sort of science, knowledge, research, experience leading us to this joint realization that we are animals and we shouldn't be veering off at massive tangents. Surely, if you're veering off at massive tangents, that reflects that your past ideology or past thoughts are way off. So, if you listen to somebody who is making a bold statement, then the next week makes another bold statement which is contrary to the advice that they've previously given, without any real explanation, why would you be listening to them? It doesn't make sense, does it? So, I'm not the brightest guy in the world. I like common sense, and I think we should follow common sense. You know, an obvious one, a silly one, is fat does not make you fat. Well, fat's fat. So why doesn't that make you fat? Okay, so you know, a simpleton would obviously take that as fact because it's fat makes you fat. But then, if you have a basic understanding of physiology, you will understand that fats are incredibly important. They are energy dense. And these, there was a video the other day saying, eat energy undense, is that a word? Low density foods to fill you up. Okay. Do we not want our bodies to be efficient? I would think yes. So the concept of filling yourself up with low density foods, ooh, give me strength. Yeah, do this, it worked for me. Well, it worked for you is great. I'm pleased it worked for you, and that just cements the idea that you're an individual, you are unique. You're not special, you're definitely not special, but you're unique. So what might work for you may not work for somebody else. So again, these guys will say, let's follow the evidence, and then make a very bold statement about a practice because it worked for them. But you're not following the evidence then, are you, if you're making an anecdote or one case study and then basing your advice to thousands of people based on your sole experience? That's not following evidence-based medicine. It is evidence, but it's really bad evidence. Well, it worked for me. Woo! So that's great. Yeah, it'll work for you. No, the body does not work like that, does it? So there are obvious commonalities and principles that we should adhere to. But again, you can't make these bold statements and state that you follow evidence-based medicine and then go, well, it worked for me. That's you're a bad scientist. So, yeah, you've got this whole TRT community, which is just essentially non-clinicians wanting to make a name for themselves. I don't take any money for this. Yeah, but I guarantee you will. Well, you're trying to. You want to be the next big thing. Well, why don't you go to medical school? Why don't you put the time in and then start talking about medical things? Because you haven't. You know, you've often come from sales backgrounds, which I think sums this whole thing up, doesn't it? You're salespeople. You're not acting in the best interests of a patient. You are trying to sell. I hate marketing. I really hate marketing. But it's a necessary evil. And it's quite fun, actually. It is quite enjoyable. But I think it's only enjoyable because we do have the assurance that we are actually doing best by our patients. We are not trying to sell them down a false dream, a false river where the primary focus is money. We obviously have to make money. You know, I've got 20 years experience in the field of medicine. I've dedicated my career to this. So, yeah, we need to be paid. But we do an awful lot of education, an awful lot of work to try and support guys that are not our patients. So if you fancy joining TRT in the UK, it's a closed Facebook group. We do loads of work there. We want to essentially change practice. We want to improve practice because from a business perspective, there's going to be plenty of business out there because it's testosterone deficiency is an under-recognised, under-appreciated medical condition that with continued education and removal of the bozos from the TRT world, more guys will have access to safe and effective care. So that's what we're fighting for. Common sense, good practice, safe practice, and always acting in the best interest of the patient.